He was one of the most celebrated CEOs in America. Featured in Forbes. Invited to the White House. Worth hundreds of millions on paper. And every single night he went home knowing that hidden inside a Swiss bank account was money the IRS had never seen. Money his board had never approved. Money his shareholders had no idea existed. For 10 years he lived 2 financial lives simultaneously. Until one disgruntled employee made one phone call. And the most carefully constructed financial secret in corporate America collapsed overnight. His name was William McGuire. CEO of UnitedHealth Group, one of the largest health insurance companies in the world. Under his leadership, UnitedHealth's stock price rose 5,000%. He was celebrated as a visionary. A genius. The kind of leader Wall Street worshipped. But behind the boardroom, McGuire had engineered one of the most sophisticated executive compensation frauds ever uncovered. Not through fake accounting. Not through hidden companies. Through something far more subtle. Something so deeply embedded in corporate culture that nobody thought to question it. Stock option backdating. And it made him illegally rich beyond imagination. The crime. To understand what McGuire did, you need to understand stock options. When a company grants options to an executive, they choose a date. That date determines the price the executive can buy stock at in the future. If the stock rises, the executive profits. Simple. Legal. Standard. What McGuire did was not standard. He looked backwards through historical stock price data, identified the days when UnitedHealth stock was at its absolute lowest, and retroactively assigned his options those dates. Dates that had already passed. Dates carefully chosen to guarantee maximum profit from day one. It was like betting on a horse race after you already knew who won. Completely illegal. Breathtakingly profitable. And hidden inside routine compensation paperwork that nobody outside the boardroom ever read carefully. Over 10 years McGuire backdated options worth $1.6 billion. Not million. Billion. Making him one of the highest paid executives in American history, through compensation his own board never properly authorized and his shareholders never properly understood. And the Swiss account? A private repository for funds so carefully separated from his official compensation that even UnitedHealth's own finance team had no visibility into its full extent. The fatal mistake. McGuire's downfall began not with a forensic audit, but with a newspaper article. In 2006, the Wall Street Journal published an investigation into stock option backdating across corporate America. UnitedHealth was named. Not as the worst offender. Just as one of many. But that article triggered something McGuire couldn't control. A former employee, someone who had been quietly suspicious for years, contacted the SEC. Not with documents. Just with a name. And a question. Ask about the dates. SEC investigators pulled 10 years of option grant records, cross-referenced them against historical stock price data, and found something that statistically should have been impossible. McGuire's option grants had been dated at or near the absolute lowest stock price of the relevant period. Not once, not twice, but consistently. For a decade. The mathematical probability of that happening by chance was effectively zero. The investigation. What followed was one of the largest executive compensation investigations in SEC history. Forensic accountants reconstructed every option grant McGuire had received since 1994. They identified the pattern with devastating clarity. They subpoenaed Swiss banking records. They interviewed board members who admitted they had signed documents without fully understanding what they were approving. The investigation expanded beyond McGuire, eventually implicating dozens of corporations in what became known as the stock option backdating scandal. Over 200 companies were investigated. Hundreds of executives resigned. Billions in compensation was recalculated. But McGuire, the man at the center, remained the most striking example. Because the scale of his enrichment was unlike anything investigators had seen. $1.6 billion. Through a mechanism hidden in plain sight inside standard corporate paperwork. The verdict. William McGuire never faced criminal charges. In 2007 he reached a civil settlement with the SEC, agreeing to repay $468 million in compensation and penalties. At the time the largest executive clawback in American history. He also agreed to a permanent ban from serving as a director or officer of any public company. UnitedHealth Group paid $895 million to settle shareholder lawsuits. The board members who signed off on years of backdated options without scrutiny paid nothing. And the Swiss account, whose full contents were never publicly disclosed, remained a footnote in one of the most remarkable stories of executive excess ever documented. McGuire walked away. Disgraced. Banned. But free. And still, despite the $468 million repayment, extraordinarily wealthy. William McGuire never forged a document. Never created a fake company. Never stole in any way most people would recognize as stealing. He simply chose different dates on a form. And made himself $1.6 billion richer. The lesson forensic accountants took from UnitedHealth wasn't about greed. It was about complexity. The most sophisticated frauds don't hide in shadows. They hide in paperwork nobody reads. Tomorrow on the Fraud Files, the biggest bank heist nobody ever talks about. Subscribe. Because the money trail never lies.